If you've ever wanted to engrave into stone but have no idea how to do it, or you've just been struggling to get the right settings, this is the video for you. So that we can start selling custom deep stone engravings, and we can also make them as gifts too. So let's get into it. This is the only UV laser and MOPA fiber laser in one, and it's on Kickstarter right now, and it's called the Lumis Ultra. And even with this laser, I have been struggling to get the right settings. At first, I did have success with this stone, but when I tried the same settings on granite, it really didn't work well at all. I also tried the UV laser, and it was slightly better, but still not really that good. I moved to different types of stones, and instead of engraving, it began melting the stone into glass. Then I tried adjusting the settings, and it transformed the stone into this ultra fine fuzz, which is really cool, but I don't think anybody's gonna pay for that. So it took me several days of testing, and I finally was able to figure it out. So here is a stone that I want to use for testing, and this is where you need to be a bit careful. There's a couple things to keep in mind. One is that this has a fracture line right through it. You can see right in there. So this is good for a test, but it's not going to be good if you wanted to make this into a product. This is not going to last. The other thing is, if you take a look at this surface, it's relatively flat on the top. And on the bottom, not quite as much, but even on the top there, you can see how it really dives off. This is important because if we start to engrave on this area here, the focal point is going to be up at the top layer. Eventually, if we use the right settings, it will get down to the right position, but then we're not going to get the depth in those areas either. Now there is a way to address that, and I will show you a little bit of that later on, but it is just something to keep in mind when you pick the stones. You want to try and get stones that are a little bit more flat than this one. Here's a good example. We have a stone which is really flat over a good portion. Here's another one. Again, really nice and flat. And there's another one. You can see that one is incredibly flat and also fairly thin too. I think this one is sandstone. So we can do a material testing array on here. We can actually do several of them and see if we can dial in the settings by using that. So I'm going to put it on here. You can see it's not level at all. And I like to use plasticine, but you can use just about anything. There we go. And it has to be fairly stable too. You don't want this thing rocking around. Adjust the focal point. So the focal point is set to the top surface there. All right, so I have a material testing array set up, and this is one of the areas that you can go wrong really quickly. And that's because a laser like this with a MOPA fiber laser has about 8 settings that you can adjust, and they each interact with each other as well, or rely on each other to get a desired result. So there's our material testing array, and you can see here most of these did absolutely nothing. This one at the very bottom, which was the slowest speed and the highest power, did make a dent. It did get into there, but the problem with this one is that it's not a different color. It's all very light and not quite what I'm looking for. So that one doesn't look too bad. I'm going to run a sample test on a different stone and see what that does. I'm not sure what this stone is, but it did not seem to do a very good job. It's very difficult to read. And in this area here, we have darks, and in this area here, we have lights. And so it's giving an inconsistent result also. Not too happy with that. This one is sandstone, and I've already tried to engrave it, and I had some success, not great success. And for the sandstone, it looks as though it did an okay job, but there's no depth to this. Really, all that it did was remove the scum or the dirt from the surface of the rock. A setting that works for one stone okay, not great, doesn't seem to work with the other ones. So that's where I was having a lot of trouble. So now let's move on to the settings that actually do work. We're going to change the speed to 700 millimeters per second. I had it set at 200, which was really, really slow. Let's leave the amount of passes at 2. So now we have pulse width. It's the amount of time that each pulse of laser light remains in that exact same spot. So right now it's 100, and I believe this is in nanoseconds. Look how far we can go up. So we can go up to 500. I'm going to change it to a pulse width of 350. That seems to work fairly well. So it's going to stay in that same spot for 350 nanoseconds. Now we have the frequency. So here it says the number of laser pulses emitted per second. Again, this does help a little bit with making sure that the heat does not build up too much in this stone. But we can play around with this number. I just found that 30 works fairly well. The angle is set to 30. That seemed to work. And then line density. I'm changing the line density from 100 to 200. I want those lines to be a little bit closer together. Gives a little bit more crisp engraving as well. So on this one, not a huge impact. It looks very similar to the first one. Slightly more crisp maybe, but other than that, very close. You can see here, very consistent engraving. This was only 2 passes. The color is consistent. It's slightly darker than the surface as well. And let's go ahead and make a few more passes just to see what this will look like. So that was a total of 8 passes, and you can see here we have really nice darkness, we have really nice depth as well, so that worked out perfectly. Very happy with that. That was a total of about 30 seconds for that engraving. Very happy with the depth on that, and you can see those 3 different types of stones. We were able to engrave all of them. I'd like to try our new settings on this stone. I think the light colored stone with a really nice deep engraving will give it a lot of contrast. So I believe this is called quartzite, an extremely dense and hard and also a heavy rock, and pretty difficult to engrave from what I've read. So let's give this one a try. We're ready to begin. I'm going to be doing 12 passes with the embossment setting, so that means that the machine will move down after every pass, although we can change the settings if we want to. And that way we can get a really nice deep engraving. Technically, we could make our way all the way through the stone if we really wanted to. That looks really good. The only thing that doesn't look so good is the position of the dot on the eye is right inside that depression in the stone. This is not what I was looking for. As you can see, it cut into my existing text. This is the opposite. I have 2 settings to choose from, and I obviously chose the wrong one. I chose concave, and I probably should have chosen convex. Exactly what I was looking for. It's neat that you can do both, but I think this one looks much better. Now, let's have some fun with this technique on this side. I'm just making sure that I have the top surface here fairly level, just so we're off to a good start. It's not as critical when you're engraving at depth with these features because the machine does move down, and with that movement we get the focal point moving down too. Well, that turned out pretty well. It didn't do perfectly on the depth map for the Lego guy, but I think that's not too bad for first try at least. Definitely shows the potential here, and you can see just how deep that went in. I think that turned out really well. I would only say that this stone seems to take a few more passes than the other type of stone, the quartzite. Next up, I think this is sandstone. You can see it has quite a rough texture to it. It's fairly abrasive. Sandstone, how did we do? It seems to be a little bit easier to engrave sandstone than the other ones. The other thing I noticed about sandstone is that it lacks the crisp edges that the other stones have as well. So it is being impacted a little bit either by the heat or the grain size as well of this sandstone. I think we did really well. You see with the MOPA laser originally, which is the same laser I'm using right now, it was having this effect where it was actually melting it, certain sections of it. It was raised and inconsistent, and the UV laser really wasn't able to get too much depth. But here we have depth and we have no melting. And I can just increase the amount of passes if I want to go a little bit deeper. This was 15 passes, so I could go with 20 passes instead. And I wanted to test out what kind of progress I've made, so you could barely read this, but this does say fiber. This was one of the first ones that I engraved. Let's go ahead and try that again with the new settings. And there we have it. Not only is that easily twice as deep, but there's also much more contrast there. Now it does blend a little bit into this mossy area. And this is the result, all cleaned up, all cleaned up. I took a minute just to clean the dust off the surface to expose the triceratops. So pretty decent. I think there's a little bit more effort maybe in the depth map. You can see the tail just barely in the background there as it dies in, and it doesn't seem like it's quite right, but still visible. The head looks really good. The legs look pretty good as well. Overall, pretty nice, and you can see just how deep this engraving is. So with these settings, we have sandstone, no problem. Shale, looks pretty good. Quartzite, looks really good. This one could be granite, could be quartzite, not really sure, but in any case, it looks really good. I thought this one was quartzite, but this one actually I think is limestone, and it turned out great as well. And last but not least is my nemesis, granite, the one I had the most difficulty with. And here you can see I have depth. I also have quite a bit of color in that depth as well. And considering that I've used all the exact same settings for all of these stones, I think this turned out nice. Of course, I could dial the settings in for each stone as well over time. And if you'd like to try doing your own engravings on stone on your MOPA fiber laser, I'll put all the settings that you need down there below in the video description. If you've been looking to set yourself apart, you can't get much better than deep engravings into stone, and with these settings, you should be able to handle just about any type of stone. Also, if you're looking for a laser that can engrave almost anything from plastics to metal to stone, the Lumis Ultra is now on Kickstarter, and I'll have a link down there below if you want to check it out. The great thing about stone is that the raw materials are cheap, and the time it takes to make an engraving ranges from 2 minutes to about 20 minutes, depending on the size and the depth, of course. I hope this video saves you a lot of time and frustration so you can start engraving on any stone to make something that lasts a very long time. Thanks to my patrons for helping to support this channel, and thank you for watching. I hope to see you on the next one.